The amount of government intervention going on in the stock market right now is extreme. The example I like to bring up is Ford. Ford is a company that's been having issues for a while now. Now, I'm not talking about the Ford of 100 years ago. Ford is a company that refused to innovate and has done a horrendous job of actually being competitive in the market. Ford makes money on trucks and SUVs built off truck platforms, with an absurd reliance on foreign manufacturing, especially Mexico. It's shocking when you compare it to a company like Toyota, which makes every single class of vehicle and does a great job at all of them. Full-size trucks, smaller trucks, compact cars, full-size cars, SUVs, hybrid vehicles, vans, everything. Ford stopped selling all cars except the Mustang for a few years now, simply because they were unable to compete with companies like Toyota and Honda. It's not even like tariffs would do much, since Toyota, Honda, and even Korean brands all have massive manufacturing bases in the US for decades now. Ford cars were bad. Their dual clutch transmissions were a huge scandal, and they're still dealing with lawsuits. It's really just stunning. Really, Ford has rot from the top down. A mismanaged company continually becoming more and more irrelevant. Now, there are a few interesting things like the Mach-E that are different, but you need to understand that the Mach-E isn't being sold yet. It isn't tested by any independent reviewers and could very likely end up like the Audi e-tron or Jaguar I-Pace situation, where they just release an electric car because that's a trendy thing. They feel like they need to release it rather than offer something that's actually competitive in the marketplace. Until we get more details saying Ford has a bright future, assuming they do is pure speculation. They have serious issues from the top down. The past 5 years or so of this company have been horrendous. They've been a very steady decline constantly. Down, 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 down. And you might say right now, virus hit them hard, they're pretty far down. I think most people really expected them to be even farther down. And I don't want to make it sound like Tesla deserves their current valuation, or that I'm in love with Tesla and Elon Musk or any of that, but companies like Tesla have accomplished engineering feats that companies like Ford, GM, or Fiat Chrysler, I really don't think are going to manage. This is a fantastic video interview with Sandy Munro. Sandy's an engineer I really respect. His resume and accomplishments are impressive, and honestly, the answer he gives on Tesla's technology and growth are powerful. I highly recommend you watch it. Puts things into perspective about the legacy auto manufacturers and why they're failing and falling behind. It's ridiculous the type of dominance that Tesla has when it comes to electric vehicles. And they didn't achieve that by acting like a company like Ford. Not to get sidetracked, great video. In order to raise capital to run the company and innovate, since they lack major cash reserves, they issue bonds. However, company bonds have a rating associated with them, sort of like how an individual has a credit score. It covers how likely the company is to actually pay you back consistently and not default. Ford is issuing junk bonds right now. Essentially, Ford doesn't really have a great history and is very likely to default. So to entice people in, they are offering ridiculously high interest rates on these bonds, things that are just not sustainable or really a good idea. The problem is, to pay that interest rate, they need to issue more and more bonds, sort of creating a negative feedback loop. To make the analogy to a consumer again, it's like they're drowning in credit card debt because they're using all their income to pay the interest, and thus need to rely on credit cards for the essentials. It's a never-ending cycle. I don't think many people would have criticized you for having bearish positions on Ford just based off the fundamentals. However, they're doing shockingly well given how screwed up the company seems. One of the big reasons for this is that the Federal Reserve has started buying the bonds of America's fallen angel companies. Ford obviously has a lot of history in the US. It's stunning the impact they had on the country and the vehicles they produce. The adoption and major implementation of the assembly line. Ford wasn't always like this, and because of that history and the previous status as investment grade bonds, the federal government is essentially buying their junk bonds. Trillions of dollars are being moved around at the federal level, and this has pumped a lot of failing companies like Ford. And it's not even like Ford is a major defense contractor or anything the US is scared to lose. There are tons of companies making cars in the United States right now. However, the US has historically been defensive of its banks and motor companies, regardless of their dumb decisions. But what does this mean for you? Really, it means that if you opened a call spread or bought puts, shorted a stock, or took any other bearish position on Ford, you would have lost a lot of money. I said earlier that I would not have blamed you for taking a bearish position on Ford given the company's fundamentals, but government intervention is at an all-time high right now, and a lot of it is specifically targeted at companies like Ford. Essentially, your tax dollars are murdering your positions. It's really incredible. This is what scares me about shorting companies like Harley-Davidson. Yes, Harley-Davidson made a lot of mistakes, and it seems to be fading away, but would the government allow that? Harley is an American company that has been around forever, and its history is rich. It has a close relationship with the US government. You see all the vehicles made for the World Wars, the Reagan defense of Harley with those import tariffs. Now, I wouldn't say that I'll buy Ford and Harley stocks, but I fear that any decline of the companies will continually be challenged by the government. At worst, their deaths would be a long, excruciating, and artificially stretched out affair. Just something I want to bring up, something to consider when betting against classic American companies, even if they seem like they're doing everything wrong. I was personally going to open a call spread on Ford, and I'm rather glad I didn't, just because of all this federal money popping in to buy crazy amounts of junk bonds.